Okay, cool. So yeah, I spoke to Jean this week. Just because she reached out.
How's
But
she doing?
I guess okay.
Good.
I have my stories too. Like I know I get stuck on my story. I was going to talk to you about eventually, but we can do pleasantries for a second and we can launch into that.
Oh, sure.
You know how
Well-
we all have like what we say and how we perceive things, and then we always go from that perspective without seeing and changing it. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's hard. Yeah.
Well, I think everybody's having a little bit of a challenge at some point, at some level. I mean, I myself I've started to learn some new things, and it's like every time I get to the next level, I always have to go through like a little crisis period because you get tested for your faith. And so I've had to battle my way through the last week or so. So
Yeah.
it is what it is, you know. And none of us are ever going to be at a point where we don't get tested and we have to battle, you know.
Yeah, I had a thing this last week, Thursday, where, what do you do with like all the tools we have and all the things we're talking about? And every once in a while you fall off the cliff. And you're trying to change course, but you're falling off the cliff. You've already left the ground and you're falling in free fall. So where do you go with that? I guess you land and then you start over.
I have a great advice for that. So I've been doing that for years and years because it's always been like this and then back up and then just like a normal cycle upward. But
Yeah.
what I do is, I've always said I have 5 people that are on my team of people that support me. And, so I reach out to a network when I start to feel like I'm falling, like I'm, like things are happening and I can't rise above it. And then I get that support and then I push through. So example was yesterday, I think I was the sickest I'd ever been in my life. Like I never had, even with Lyme and all that, but I don't even know what it was, to be honest with you. So I reached out to my network and I said, could you please, like pray with me on this? And I gradually got better throughout the day. And then I was back to out doing my runs today and etc. But it was extreme. And it felt like when I prayed about it, the thought came to me like it was a thought nuke, like a negative thought nuke just like hit me. And it just, because all of this stuff is thought. Every disease is a thought. Everything is a thought. And so what do? You reach out, you set it up in advance before you need it. And then you reach out for your team. And that's why I've always wanted to build like spiritual special forces teams, because if you have people and say, hey, I need your support, then they have your back during that time.
Right. Yeah. There's something like Thursday that all day, those people that are not on my team, but they were around, said all sorts of different things. And everyone was a step down, step down, step down, step down. And then I fell right off the cliff. I was thinking about that because I think you talked about like having, whatever this disease that people think they have in the last 2 years. I'll just put it that way, because I supposedly got it somewhere at Thanksgiving because someone called me up and said, well, they sat across the table with me at dinner and they had it. And I did really well for about a week, but I didn't keep the thoughts away. And I was really curious when you did, because I don't have that skill set yet. Like I don't have that enmeshed yet.
Yeah. So what you're going to need is, first of all, you need to know the truth. Because remember, Jesus said, know the truth and the truth shall make you free. So the truth is that you are free. You are healed. You can't be taken out of God. Like we know that this is the truth. But when you're under the like a strong suggestion like that, like a collective belief,
yeah,
it would be advisable to get support, to get prayer from somebody you don't receive prayer from an amateur, because if they see you as sick, you're actually praying in reverse.
Yes.
Yeah.
That was the shift. And that's what I noticed when you, okay, continue, go ahead.
Well, that's it, really.
That's it. Because yeah.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
like it's not almost like having a mantra, but it's like having a mantra. where you can repeat certain things over and over, so you keep yourself out of that space of, and there's also the asking until you receive, because you keep yourself in that space.
Yep. You have to hold persistently until, you see. So the idea is that every negative, what you call negative circumstance, is really neither good nor bad. We have to remove that and recognize it's nothing. It's all error is nothing. Okay. But it comes as a strong mental suggestion. And then the five senses, which are also nothing, because your life is not contained in anything physical. It's a dream. It tries to come against the truth, right? And it has no life other than what you give it in thought. And so if you can hold your thought, I'm from the pure mind of God. I never left heaven. That which never changes is my true estate. Read what the Psalm 91 says, right? Because he has set his love upon me, I shall deliver him and honor him, right? And see, we have to really hold to that and get support for people to hold it with you. It's really powerful. Without the support, I think it takes a lot longer until you're at a certain level where those things don't affect you as much.
Right. Oh, so how do we get that to work? Like you said, everyone around you, or not around you, but yeah, having those strong people, or those strong people who already are walking that talk.
Well, the only community that I know that actually is good at this are the Christian Scientists.
Oh, you did reference them before.
Yeah, I mean, nobody else has a community that's capable of doing this. There are individuals here and there, but the majority of people are so alienated by the actual truth that they go to the fake truth, which is the opposite of the evil, which is the good, right? But see, there is no good or evil, but the truth is a principle. And so when you have the truth as a principle, and other people know that principle of your being is held in Christ, which is in perfection as a reflection of God, and they can hold that thought of you being there and you can't be moved out of that place, that's the true prayer.
Right.
The fake prayer is, oh, you have a condition, well, it'll get better. Let's put some of this onto it and let's see it getting undone. There's nothing to get undone, you see.
Right. Right.
And then even worse is people that pray in fear, and they're even more afraid for you than you are.
Yeah.
You see.
Yeah.
It's like they mean well, but they don't have the ability to help you in that situation.
Right.
Yeah. So I really believe that Mary Baker Eddy championed the building of the church in terms of teaching people how to do healing work. There were many people who knew how to do this, but in terms of building the church, Mary Baker Eddy was the best of the best ever.
Right.
And so if you need a support network, that's a good place to start, is a Christian Science practitioner.
Okay.
One of my supports is Lona Ingwerson, who she has the consciousness where the scorpion bite bit her and she survived because she knew that nothing could touch her but God's love. And when I get really, really hit with something, like yesterday when I had this, like I called it a thought nuke, it was like I called her and she gave me her little 30 seconds and that was it. She doesn't have to talk about the problem. She just tells you the truth and lets it go,
Right.
And so you don't need to have like all 5 people at the same time, but you should have at least a handful of people in case you can't get a hold of 1 or 2,
Right.
And so then when you need some support, you ask for it. Could you know the truth about this situation for me? And it works for finances too, because business, everything is all a matter of knowing the truth, and the truth makes you free.
Right. Gotcha. That was a gem. Right.
Yes.
Knowing the truth and just bring it into each area of your life.
Yes. And because when we're tempted and we come under the, especially nothing is worse than when you feel weak and you're really, you feel like you're dying. Nothing could be further from the truth because you'll never die. But when the body is telling you, the carnal mind, it's the carnal mind.
Right.
That's an aggressive mental suggestion. And so you have to hold your thought to a purity in that space and rise above that thought. And then it helps to bring somebody in who has already demonstrated that that they can do this.
Right.
Yeah. And I think that the Christian Scientists are the best in the world. They absolutely are. The ones who have really embraced the full teaching that Mary Baker Eddy taught. And, you know, it's like, I always say, if you're not at least 50 and older and a female, you're not my mentor, because it's usually, they're all grandma Christian Scientists are all my mentors, because they've been around long enough and they've battled everything.
Right.
They're the best in the world. And everybody else is like a charlatan. They'll pay $500 for some bull crap. Oh, I'm going to energy heal you and this and that. It's like, you got to be kidding me, dude. You know, for
Yeah.
$500, you just wasted my money, you know?
Yeah, I was just scrolling through my friends. I'm like, okay, they're good friends, but they're friends and they're energy healers and blah, 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 blah. But they're more willing to sit with the problem than they are with the solution.
Well, the thing is all of it is charlatans, because the thing is, if you know the truth and the truth makes you free, then what's all the circus for? You see, why are you talking about the problem even? Why are you even bringing it up? You know, even Phineas Parker's Quimby, the guy who taught Mary Baker Eddy, I was just revisiting one of his books while I was laying around yesterday, and he said that if you go to the doctor and the doctor tells you anything that brings you any sense of disharmony, they have committed malpractice. You know, you should never tell anybody that there is anything wrong with them, ever, no matter what. That's just the carnal mind looking at its own reflection. And the carnal mind has nothing to do with God's creation. And you see, if you involve yourself with mental malpractice, you're going to get troubles in your results.
Yeah.
You know, it might take you years and years to get over something because you're committing all this malpractice. Whereas if you know the truth doesn't require anything other than your knowledge of it to set you free, because you already are free.
Right.
You see what I mean?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
Food for
So
thought.
what I do is, realistically, is when I get hit with something that's like, usually it always happens when I'm on the next level of learning something. You know, it's like you get tested for your faith. If sometimes it gets really bad, and I'm like, hey, Lona, here's what's going on. And she's like, she's never concerned about it because she knows it's nothing. But see, that's her wisdom from being around the block for so many times of going through all this, but she has the faith to just be like, it's nothing, you know?
Is that what she says?
Usually she's just like, oh, you know, this is really something. And she tells me something. It's usually like a 30-second story because she's a really good orator. And then that's it. That's the whole deal, you know? And it's not what she says, it's what she knows.
Right. Okay. Yeah. That makes
Yeah.
sense.
Because Mary Baker used to be able to just look at somebody with her consciousness and they'd be made whole. Like people that would get run over by a guy got like mangled by some piece of equipment and nobody could look at them. They were gross, and they came to Mary Baker Eddy and she just looked. Then she saw the sight, she turned away from it and just looked to God and just got into the allness of God, and straightway the guy was made whole. He stood right up. Like, you see, she wasn't mesmerized by the dream of the five senses.
Right.
So getting into the allness of God is the secret to restoring your business, your health, all of your affairs. And ignorance and suffering are one and the same. So when you're tempted by ignorance and you know, the serpent in the garden, that's the Genesis 1 serpent in the garden. When you're tempted that way, you have to get back into the allness of God and you have to stay there. And so yesterday was a day for me where I took out the 91st Psalm and I held steadfast to that just one thing, you know, because, you know, he has set his love upon me, I shall deliver him. And I stayed with that one thing the whole time. Lona told me something quick and I gradually got improvement. And then this morning I decided, you know, I'm going to take I'm going to take the day to myself and I'm just going to I prayed all day. I did my prayers for others and I prayed for, just praying. And then I decided, okay, I'm up. Nothing is nothing. I'm going to do everything. And just went outside, did my run, and that was it,
Right.
But realistically, nothing is nothing. And so all disease is nothing, all of it. Even as scary as it ever looks, it's all nothing.
Right. Right. Yeah. Just, and not being so tied into the outcome, be a certain way, a specific way.
Yeah, you have to undo the idea that you have to do anything, that there's any healing that has to ever be done.
Right.
Because that would imply that you somehow slipped out of God's creation.
Yeah.
You
Okay.
see what I mean? But see, that's how tricky the carnal mind is it's trying to hide the good from you. And, Quimby discovered, he was the great mesmerist, and he was the first one that Mary Baker Eddy went to. He discovered under mesmerism that you could put somebody into hypnotic spell and they could read the minds of everybody in the room, and that they could communicate with the so-called dead, which is all just one mind, and he could get all this information. And he realized that there is no death and there is only one mind. And he started to capture this principle.
Mhm.
And so he knew that whatever somebody was suffering from was from belief, because man is a medium of error or truth. And so we become the instrument of immortality when we know the truth.
Okay.
Yeah. And so that pretty much implies that everything else is a lie. Every man is a liar. All of the carnal ideas are lies. And is even the good that is good in the carnal is not the good. Only the good is that which God bestows. You see?
Yeah.
Yes.
It's like right. The good that's in the carnal is just looping you into accepting other things that are not true.
Right. I
Yeah.
mean, otherwise gluttony is good and pornography is good and theft is good and greed is good, because the carnal mind likes all of those things.
Mhm.
But the carnal mind is always enmity against God. So it always wants to trick you with a false good and then scare you with a false evil.
Right. To keep you in that loop. It was funny, not funny, but I noticed I have usually wake up and I jump off the cliff, go to sleep. You're sleeping for whatever. You wake up and I can sometimes be right back to where I started the night before. I noticed like 2 days ago, I woke up happy. Things were whole. I didn't have all these thoughts in my brain. I was able to like keep it through. And then my brain went, oh, but that's not normal. How are we just happy and calm and going with the flow? And it's better. I didn't slip back way better where I was like 3 weeks ago or my entire life. But it was different. It was a different experience to suddenly be able to just take a breath and wake up, not being worried about what was happening or had happened, and just be excited about what's coming and be calm and peaceful about what's coming. It was very cool. So I wanted to not want to I guess all these tools just keep it so I can continue that and not necessarily replicate it, but get rid of some of that extra fluff that was happening or extra drama or attachments, or I'm looking for a word for that.
It's an illusion.
What?
Illusion.
Oh, that's a good word. Okay.
When you know it's an illusion, see, it really is. The carnal, I noticed this the first time. The first time I ever noticed this was realistically, well, that it was that car accident when I was 20, and I was on the highway, and a truck stopped on the highway because they were grading and the dust and all that they couldn't see, and I remember coming up at 50 plus miles an hour, and I realized I'm going to smash right into the back of this truck, and I said, "No, God, no!" And then in that second, time stopped, and the whole car wrapped around me, everything shattered around me, and I was completely unscathed. And they didn't understand how that happened, because
Right.
they were like, "How did you get out of this with just a little bump on your head from the airbag?" It was really a God moment. I watched the illusion as the illusion it was. I really saw the illusion. You see, and then I've had so many more when I got out of the eating disorder. I remember becoming pure awareness and then recognizing that the activity had no meaning and it was just phenomenon. And then it just fell away. It was gone. You see, it was just gone. Like the next day it was gone. And then 3 weeks later, I hadn't even had an impulse and I knew it was gone. Like it was crazy. It's just, I knew it was gone. And so because it was an illusion. But see,
Yeah.
but
Good.
it's so cunning though, because you can be in the illusion, but whenever there's a person, condition, or circumstance, you're in the illusion. That's how cunning it is.
Are you in the observer mind then while you're going through? Are you thinking actively from the observer mind, or not thinking actively, but you're observing?
Well, to be okay, God is no respecter of persons, right?
Mhm.
Respect means to observe. So if you see a person, you're not seeing what God sees. You're
Oh,
seeing what the carnal mind has put in front of you. The carnal mind takes something that is true and substitutes it with something false at every turn. So the true man of God is spiritual, perfect, and whole. The carnal mind shows you the mortal that is aging, declining, falling apart, sick, struggling to make ends meet. You see?
mhm.
And that's why when you look at that and observe that thing, right, and then you say it's good or bad, then what you've done is you've just given another God an graven image, because the other God is what you ascribed power to, which was a graven image, is something God never created. You see how that's the illusion right there.
Right.
So yes, you become this pure awareness, the observer, and as you reflect on that, the what they call the I am presence within, if you spend time in at least 5 minutes a day minimum, you'll start to get that connection again.
Right.
But just recognize, I mean, look right now, you see this thing, this object. The truth is that the man of God, one man, the living manifestation of God, is pure, spiritual, and whole. But you see the counterfeit, because you see a mortal, and you see something that ages, something that withers, something that decays. That's what the carnal mind is showing you. It's dreaming. You see?
Right.
So the key is to drop your good and bad off of that, and then you reverse course from the garden where you ate of the knowledge of good and evil.
Oh, okay.
You get it?
Right.
Reverse course.
Yeah.
Right? Because you stepped into the illusion where there are graven images,
Mhm.
and then you gave another God, you gave power, like God's power, away to those graven images. And that's how you broke the commandments. So you undo all that to undo the sickness, the poverty, all of the things that the carnal mind does. The carnal mind does all those things because it's ignorant of God.
Mhm. Okay.
And so you get a glimpse of God, even just a minute of God's a glimpse of that, just a minute of it can remove something that's been in your life for years.
So that's like when you go hiking, you see beautiful stuff or beautiful sunsets. It just gives you that moment of, it shifts your where your presence is, your awareness is, and then you can start, because that's happened. Or like your experience, I've had a couple of those where like somebody moved the car off the road as I was about to hit something, or stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Where so you're not. This is different though, I guess, if you're thinking that you're not in charge, that, or like the hand of God reached down and protected you from something.
There are times
like you in the car accident.
when God intervenes,
Mhm.
but then there are also times that you have to press in. And that's, it's all by grace. But pressing it, like yesterday, God did not intervene for me. Like I was not just instantly set free from that mesmerism. I had to press in the whole day. Like there was no getting out of it without work, you know?
Gotcha. Yeah.
Yeah. And Quimby even said that correcting someone's mind, which is what he called his healing work, knowing the truth, he said was the hardest work in the world. He said it was harder than any physical labor he ever did. Because it really is that hard if you're doing it all alone. But that's why you call in support. When you really are in a real jam, you call for help.
Okay. That makes sense. Right.
I mean, that's the best I know. I mean, there's nothing else that I've ever done that's ever been more fruitful than that, because everything else implies fear.
Right. And I was just thinking, what, yeah, the Holy Spirit, that's not like I don't have support, but I am very careful to talk to people who I notice who comes around me and says stuff that I really wish they wouldn't. And there's other people I reach out to specifically because they see wholeness. So yeah, that makes perfect sense. And then instead of going into where somebody is that like you're holding space for them? Because you see them in their I am presence or in their I am perfection?
Well, I've been working on this for a long time, you know, and when you're not attached at all, it's so much easier for you to hold that correct sight for that person. Allegedly, there is no person there, but you hold the correct sight, and that helps them tremendously. You know, an example is I had a guy write me, he wanted to share the testimonial. Like, I just put up this, I will pray for others, right? That's what I put up. And he said that the day that he did it, he said he got like this $300 free bonus check from somewhere. And he said, he said it just happened like that. Well, here's the idea. Every time I've prayed and I've gotten set free, immediately the solution is made available, because they're, like I said, the problem and the solution are one and the same in the natural. So once you clear away the ignorance, then whatever is needed will already be there.
Oh, I didn't understand that. I was thinking like we were thinking we had to have this solution. So we were creating a problem around getting that solution or something like that. I understand that now. Yeah, like once you clear away the debris that you're sitting in, the solution is already there.
Yeah, you know, and the irony is that the world's ways are so foreign. If you're in tune with God, the world's ways are so foreign. For instance, I was watching this guy explain, you know, and he's very successful. He's got like a 9-figure business, but he's explaining how you make $1 million, and he's writing down like you have to get 9 sales at 10,000. You have to set this many appointments. And I thought, what a load of crap. Like I have never done any of that, like ever. Like that is so carnal, left-brained. To think that you can control reality in that way is such you know, every time you see that, you know, manipulation is going on, and manipulation always brings unintended consequences. You know, and the reality is that's all carnal mindedness.
Yeah, that's too many details. I couldn't even do that.
Well, it's like saying, okay, here's the deal. I'm gonna make everything happen according to my will, right?
Mhm.
You've just given another God power. Your will is not a God, and you've just ascribed God's power to your human will, which is the carnal mind. So what you've done is you've just stepped into ignorance, and it can only end on a sour note, because you've just given power to a false God.
Right. And you're saying it's all about you and not about you being part of the whole.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, you know, when Mark Schwartz talks about in his talk, God's law of abundance, you know, when he was $1 million in back taxes, and he just stopped picking up the phone. He stopped doing what he was accustomed to doing. And then the phone started ringing, and he focused on what God was bringing to him. And he knew that only the good was the good which God bestows, and then pouring gratitude upon that. He was like, his whole business resurrected just right then and there. And you see, that's God's way. It's so different than the world's way. I mean, even tithing, look at tithing. It's stupid in the world's way. I mean, if you can't live on 100%, why would you try to live on 90, right? Well, it's not about that. It's about letting go of your will and your ego, and letting God supply. That's what it's for.
Right.
You know, so God's ways are always going to be at war according to carnal mind's ways, because carnal mind does not like them.
Right. And it's how they're getting the spiritually, like tithing, where you're being spiritually fed. Because I think I asked that in the Telegram group from last month. Because I was like, was it charity or is it tithing? And then you addressed it in like the next video. Like,
Yeah.
okay, because it makes no sense. If you're going to give money to people to help them, that's not tithing.
No, that's actually seeing people as less than, and you're actually praying in reverse for them.
Gotcha.
You know, you've just passed judgment upon something. So it's really actually detrimental. And that's why it says in the Nag Hammadi library, I think it's the Gospel of Philip, or one of those Gospels, Jesus says, you ruin your soul by doing that.
Right. Okay.
You know, a tithe is only for, you know, I am looking to God's wisdom. And then you see, because you're looking, you will find it. It will come through, and you sow to that place because you're actively looking for wisdom. And then what it is it's saying, I surrender the control. I'm obedient to this law of God. I know that I of myself can do nothing, at least nothing that I'm going to want to do, because human will is going to drive me into a corner. I want to let God's will be done. You see?
Yeah.
And that's really how it starts to work.
Okay.
Yep. Because, you know, I mean, charitable giving makes you feel good about yourself in the natural, but in reality, it's not honoring God. It's all about wisdom. That's the only thing. The principle is wisdom.
Right. Or like I was giving to, or I still am here and there. There's so many problems in the world, so I'm going to give to this organization to help resolve those problems.
It just spreads the problem.
What was that?
It spreads more problems, because in the natural, solutions create problems. So the bigger the organization gets, the bigger the problem gets. Just look at the medical system. Look at how big it is, and look at how many sick people there are. 3 out of 5 people in the US have a chronic diagnosable disease. I mean, you see, the solutions create problems. I mean, you think with a government that's as big as it is, you'd have some sort of governance, right? I mean,
Yeah, we know better.
right?
Yeah.
So the solution is always carnal mindedness. Always says, well, we need to make more of it. Let's do more. Let's be bigger, more. And in reality, guess what? Self-governance is a principle of God. You see, the self governs all within its own wisdom. And that is the singular one. But then the counterfeit that the carnal gives you is that, well, we need to have this big old monstrosity to govern everybody, you see?
Yeah, here we are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you walk into the medical clinic, and then you know what they do? They look for problems.
Yeah. I'm just closing the phone so I don't see it. Notifications. Yeah, the guy that started the medical clinic, like the owner of it, it's a huge medical clinic. When I had my whatever, I didn't do their protocols. And he said things to me a week later, like, I don't know why you're not dead. You didn't do what we told you to do. Like, that's why I'm not dead. Because I didn't do what you told me to do.
That's why I'm alive still. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, he was not, it wasn't pleasant. But anyways, I thought I engaged on that level, but I just thought, wow, I'm not engaging.
Right. And you know, they may mean well, they could, some of them, okay?
Right.
But a little bit misguided can be very dangerous, you know? Because if I look at you and I say, oh my gosh, you have this horrible problem, and you know, pass judgment upon you. And if you believe that, now you've just created that.
Right.
Because in reality, the carnal mind is
willing to say that. Yeah.
Yeah. Carnal mind was looking at its own evidence.
Oh, good point. Yeah. Oh, gotcha.
See, if you, let's say, for instance, if you have a nurse and she's like got a rule that she made up in her mind that, well, everybody that comes into my office has always got high blood pressure, right?
Whatever, laboratory.
And if you walk in there you know what
Yeah.
she's going to create? She's going to see with her carnal mind, with the carnal mind is going to
Mhm.
create that condition. And then it's going to look at you and try to accuse you of having it.
Right.
And then if you believe it, now there are two of you that are ignorant and nobody has a solution.
And nobody's well, exactly. Or we're all focused on whatever. And either I'm fighting that and she's fighting that because that's what she sees.
Yep.
Exactly.
And then they bring in the expert, and the expert's just going to tell you how bad it is and why you need to do something immediately and give you more fear.
Right. Yeah.
So it's really, I don't know, I mean, you have to do the math, right? We're going in the wrong direction.
Yeah, I noticed it was interesting talking about like having support. I've got a whole house full of people, so I had to set myself up in a different room for all my stuff and different conversations. I noticed in that sphere, I had to really do a lot of mind, or I think to keep myself out of that fear based. Because if I listened to them and stayed in their, even in their energy, if you want to talk about it like that, it was just a whole different energy that I wasn't used to being. It was just like, I don't know if I engineered the experience so I could experience that and see what other people are experiencing when they come out of it, if they're coming out of it. So I don't know if we're supposed to be the support system for that when people come out of that, and holding that space. But I don't think I understood how bad it was for people that are enmeshed in that reality.
Yeah. Well,
do you have to have those experiences to understand that? Or can you just not have those experiences and like see the, like we were talking about, like see the wholeness in without having to physically feel that? I'm trying to circumvent.
you can see the wholeness, and the more, well, the idea though is that your faith has to be tested. Your faith will be tested. You earn your stripes in your spiritual walk, I mean, it's like, if you don't go through a fire, then you really haven't earned your stripe, like you're not as refined. I mean, if I told you that God is all and God is love, it's different for someone who has walked through, the valley of the shadow of death and held steadfast to that and been protected, versus somebody who's never been through it and they say, well, God is all, God is love. You see, they
That's
have
a whole different experience.
yeah. Like, I've tithed for 2 decades. I can tell you that God provides, but if I told you that and I had never done it for 2 decades or even a year, then my faith is not as strong. You see? So back to square one is I've demographically profiled it. Since I grew up with my grandma, and my grandma was my person, and she was like my love network, I have these spiritual grandmas that are my mentors.
Yeah, I caught that immediately when you said that.
Yeah. Yep. And so I just, that's what works for me. But they all are very, very knowledgeable in the truth. Like, I wouldn't just reach out to anybody and say, I need your help, because they'd be like, well, what's the problem? If they say, what's the problem? And they believe there's a problem, I'm in trouble, because now they're going to see a problem on me.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh,
So,
yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
So get a network, get someone in place. You do it when the times are good. It's like saving for a rainy day, right? You do it when you don't need it. Yeah.
Yeah. And get that solid network. I think I have 3 in place. I know I have 2 in place right now. So that's not bad. You only need 1.
You only need 1. I have 5 because I have reserves, but that's, just in case, but I go to 1, and then if 1's not there, I go to number 2, and 2's not there, I go to number, so.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's what you do, is you just, and then that's your spiritual person. And then you, as you give out, that's why I started praying for others, because as you give out, it's just like anything, you get more. And when you pray,
it gets stronger. You're
yes,
strengthening all that stuff. So it's more enmeshed. And like somebody said to me yesterday, I said, what do you do when you fall off the cliff? And he's like, well, this is a tool. Now that I've suggested it to you, you start to use it. You'll remember and you'll start to use it, and then it gets stronger.
Yep. You do. And I'm creating this app that should be out soon, which is going to be a great tool too. It's going to be the app with the new 78 keys.
Yeah.
I use that when I pray for others because it gives me the truth that I need to see for them. And I've created a system that I can replicate prayer for people. And I just hold the truth. So I disregard person, condition, circumstance, good and bad regarding those circumstances. And I get rid of all of the animal carnal mindedness that they're seeing, because they write to me what the carnal mind is seeing. And then I flip it to the truth and I just get into that truth.
Are you doing the whole like 7, 9 card, whatever it was, spread for each problem, or you pull in a card? Like when you pray for somebody?
No, you do the whole spread.
Okay.
Yep. And it takes only, when you have the cards, it doesn't take but a couple minutes to do the whole thing. But the key is once you have the truth, you get into that truth until you feel the certainty of that truth.
Yeah.
Like if I know that that's the truth and I feel it in my soul, that's all I've done. That's all I'm required to do. You see?
Mm-hmm.
And that's all you're ever required to do when you're providing that type of prayer for someone.
Right.
We should do an example of it. We should do one so I could show you right now.
Cool. Because we did that one, was it 2 weeks already? It was so profound. I
Yes.
could pick those cards better. Like
So
what the issue was. That
So
would work.
what I'll do is I'll do one right now that you'll pick the cards, and just
Okay.
give me a second, and then I will, do you want to do it to address what's you've been thinking about now, or what are you thinking?
Yes, let's do you mean like what we're talking about? Is that what you mean? What we're thinking about?
Well, I meant in specific with what
In
you were,
specific.
with you, like what's, if you think of something specific.
Okay. Are we talking about what's specific, or are we just doing it?
Well, I'm going to let you decide that. I'm going to let you pick the cards, and then you'll see. I'm going to go with your knowing. So first, let me lay out the boxes. And so again, we have the earth. Okay, we have the water, and we have the wind, and we have the fire. And then we have the aversions. We have the attachments.
And then truth.
Sorry. And then yes, the ether, the AETHER, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So here. All right. So you give me 1 to 78 are the keys. So you just give me a number between 1 and 78.
72.
Okay. Give me another one.
Okay. 36.
Okay, another one.
42.
Okay, another one.
15.
Okay, another one.
28.
Did you say 28?
28, sorry, yes.
Okay, another one.
31.
And one more.
52. I got a lot of twos there, but okay.
That's okay.
What's really good is you spoke over it like I was thinking of them while I was, it jogs you faster. Without
Yes.
thinking about, what should I pick? And the best part about this app, I would start to have them memorized. I'd be like, I want to pick this one because I like it.
So here's the secret. Spirit is the same as like flow state. It happens. See, spirit comes before even psyche kicks in, before all that carnal mind kicks in. Now look at, not many people have caught this, but I caught it. When Mary Baker Eddy got her healing, she was laying on her bed, assuming she was going to die. She grabbed her Bible, and guess what she did? She randomly opened it, which means she just threw it out there, and that's what spoke to her in that time of need, because God, being all wisdom, knows before you even ask and has given you before you. So this process works the same. So it gives you before you even ask. So let's go ahead and let's look at these. And what I'll do is I will read them to you so you can just see the chart, because you can't see what I'm looking at right now, right? With the different keys. You can only
No,
see the
I just
boxes,
see the
right?
numbers. I just have the boxes.
Okay. So let me just read these to you. So I'm going to start with the earth and begin our way up. So number 72 says, if you believe you were born of flesh to an earthly mother and father, you are still governed by the law of strife.
Okay.
Now let's go to the water, and that's number 42. And that says, beware of spiritual pride as it is nothing. It is the same false god of human reasoning that will be trying to seek for peace and harmony. God is the peace and harmony. That which seeks it is therefore ignorant and nothingness. See, that really implies we don't have to try to heal. We are healed. See?
Right.
Okay, so now 36 is our wind card. The good that humans will call good is the relative of a false god. Therefore, it is best to leave all good as a quality that only God can bestow, as he has already called it good. Arguing is the position of refusing to be of one mind. Good cannot be added or taken away. So that was a little bit complex, but only the good is that good which God bestows. He's already called all of his substance good. You exist in that substance. Trying to add anything or take anything away, trying to heal or trying to do anything is really saying that the good that he's bestowed hasn't good enough.
Yeah, another way I was thinking, another way to put that is that like the discomfort or the things that you're trying to push that they're not right, because it wouldn't be so hard if they were supposed to be there.
Yes, and that's what comes to you when you heard it, right?
Yeah.
See, that's wisdom speaking to you. That's great. So 15 is our fire card. Now, this is the one you use to burn away any continuing ignorance that comes up. Since Jesus is the Prince of Peace, the evidence of following him is your refusal to leave your position of rest. Rest is releasing every sinful temptation.
That's like the striving.
Yeah. Yeah, we can just stay rooted on a truth. We don't have to try to
Right.
make it happen, because the truth makes us free.
Right.
That's right. So the aversion.
That's a breathing here. I keep taking like deep breaths, like there's so much truth happening.
And you're getting all of this. See, it's all clicking in.
Yeah.
So 28 is the aversions.
Okay.
Okay, it says, I am this perfect day, and that which lives in me is the light that cannot fail, says all of creation.
That's the aversion?
Yep.
I understand that then. The
Well,
aversion.
aversion is something you're trying to push away, something that you've labeled as not good. Okay.
Oh,
And so I am this perfect day, and that which lives in me is the light that cannot fail, says all of creation.
oh, okay.
God created all substance that was ever made, and God called it good. So anything that is not that good never was created.
Okay, funny, not funny. We had this like fun conversation, I think a couple birthdays ago, and I was like, oh, everyone else is good but me. Ah,
There you go.
there you go.
All right, so here's the attachment. It says, do not seek to realize any outcome other than to know God and rest in the certainty of his supreme governance over all creation.
The attachments means I'm trying to attach this, or
Attachments means that we think it's good. We are rooted in the idea that this is a good thing for me. Like an attachment could be, even for me, like working out is good for me because it gives me health. Well, in reality, God is the only health that ever existed. So my taking of that thought that this is what gives me health is really a false idol.
okay.
You see? So attachments are something we attach ourselves to, thinking that, that we are doing something. You see,
I'm not going by grace at that point. I'm going by actions.
yeah, you are. That's right. We're
Yeah.
attached to it. And aversion means we're trying to like push it out of our life.
Okay,
So both attachments and aversions are created out of human reasoning,
right.
good and bad. Okay. And so here's the rest card. The Aether is 52. Is I am of the pure mind of God. No other mind exists.
Okay,
Have only one mind.
right.
Now that's deep. You know, that one I've meditated on a lot. Like have only one mind and hang on to that and don't let it go.
That's like a still point to be at.
Yeah. And to know that God is, and outside of God is nothing. And that includes the nothing includes all sin, sickness, disease, poverty, death, aging, decline. All of it exists outside, which means it doesn't exist. It's nothing. It's the dream of the carnal mind. So if I am of the pure mind of God, well, then somebody explained it to me this one time. If you have a whole ocean and it's pure, it's completely pure. But if somebody takes a little dye dropper and drops a little red dye in the ocean, is it still pure?
Mm-mm.
No. And see, if you're a drop in the ocean of God, then you can't even have even the slightest little drop anywhere within any part of your creation because God never created it.
Oh, and my brain's like, oh, I'm the red thing dye that just went into the ocean. I'm just plugging in.
Well, the carnal mind says that, yes. The
Yeah,
carnal mind says, well, look at me, I'm not, you know.
yeah,
So
Yeah.
to be of the pure mind is to be that, to know that that purity is you.
right. Sorry about this. Yeah, we don't want to have the same technical difficulties. There we go. It's brighter again. It's happier.
Yeah, no problem.
Battery just as.
Yeah,
So-
so
Okay,
so this is really, this is our work. Our work is to just know the truth and let the truth do all the work.
right,
You know, we take inspired action, of course, but inspired action is a lot different than attachments and aversions.
right.
You know what I mean?
Mhm.
You know, an example would be how I created the falling into an eating disorder was attachments and aversions. When I was young, I said, well, this food is bad and this food is good. And this body type is bad and this body type is good. And over time, it became a mental illness
Mhm.
because it was a mental illness from the beginning.
Mhm.
And so to see it with the pure mind, which is what I did, was to undo all of the illusion. And that's what I did in that moment was I just happened to stumble into it, but that's how it worked.
Right.
And so that's really, and then what's the inspiration from the pure mind? Well, I reflect health because it's God's health I reflect, which is that, you know, mobility, all of the functions, the perfect freedom of expression, harmony within all of its members. That's God's substance. I live in that substance. I'm not trying to add to it, and I can't take anything away from it.
Right.
Yeah.
So like I keep thinking, or I was thinking, or some point, I have 1,500 supplements to supplement the health of blah, 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 blah.
Yep.
Right. And then I research more and I have to have the next best bottle of whatever.
Yeah. I used to be huge into that world, and that's also aversions and attachments massively,
Yeah.
you know, because I mean, realistically, if you have to take 55 things a day to stay functioning, those are, you know what that is? You know, in the East, they have all these gods they put on the mantle. Those are your gods on the mantle.
Yeah, they are.
You're like, oh, bow down to vitamin C today, must bow down to vitamin D, must bow down to, you know.
Yeah.
There's no difference.
Good point, because you're putting your power into something else. You're not putting your power into what's pure. Yeah.
Exactly. So I've noticed the more and more I get into this work, the less and less I even care about, like, you know, like I got up this morning and I had a couple donuts for breakfast with orange juice. And like, does it matter? It doesn't even matter. Like, I enjoy having what I have, and I don't have to like qualify it and say, well, it should be higher in protein. It should be. It's like, it doesn't matter.
Right.
You know? Yeah.
Yeah, and I used to be able to drink coffee all the time. At some point, I got in my head that I couldn't drink coffee and go to bed. And I've never had that problem. So I was like, cool, I'll have coffee at night. Slept really well because I stopped having that attachment to it.
Exactly.
Occurred to me that, or whatever, I'm really good about like, okay, the chronological age and what we should or should not be doing. And I don't read the book, so I don't really pay attention to it. But every once in a while, something will creep in.
Oh, it does.
Yeah,
You know, it's always creeping in. Like Quimby always used to say that minds mingle. So he says you could walk into a room, and because minds mingle, just like if I yawn, the whole room yawns. That's
Yeah.
how illness is conveyed too. You see, it's a mental belief, it's a mental thought. So if you think about it, that's the conveyance system for all of this stuff. So what you're treating is you're treating a mental state and a mental image. And so you're taking that to thought and getting into the pureness of God and letting the pureness of that truth come in and cast down that false thing.
Right.
You know, and we get even further into it. Like I used to, literally, I stopped doing the supplements when I had like a whole, I'd open up my cabinets and I had like a whole 3 rows worth of supplements. And I was like, do I really have to take all this stuff every day to have health? I'm like, that's stupid. I'm like, how
Right.
dumb have I gotten? Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Did you toss them or did you take them until they were done? So much.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's insane. And then you go on, you can't even go on vacation because you got to remember to take all of your supplements with you. And it's like, does it really even matter? Does it
And
really?
you have to have them timed for the ones you take in the morning and the ones you take at night. And you have to separate if you want to take all the bottles. To
Yep.
make it all together and you take the right amount. Yeah, I've been there, done that.
And all it
Yeah.
is it's false gods and graven images. And it's just
And
putting
you're
up-
saying like something that's not, right. It's something you have to grasp it. It doesn't matter if you're grasping at a vitamin or whatever.
yeah.
Yeah.
And that's why some people can live without food and without water. Some people have trained themselves to do that. And this is all at varying levels of your walk, right?
Mhm.
Like I like to stay hydrated. I still believe in that. And I still believe in moving with exercise because I enjoy it. But I've noticed that the more spiritual I become, the less I put on importance of that stuff. You know, and the supplements were one of the first things that started to fall away, you know,
Mhm.
because I realized that, you know, the only visible results that actually are concrete provable is the bank statements where I show up on the expenses of how much I'm spending on them, you know?
True. End of the year, when you start doing taxes, going, did I really do that? And you
Yeah.
can't get off your flex plan anymore, so. It's
Yeah.
funny.
I've spent how many thousands this year on supplements? Yeah. So,
Yeah. Good point.
and then you realize that, okay, I actually can test it out and let's just go 90 days and let's try it without and see if I can just reflect a quality of health belonging to God. And let's see if my performance actually gets better. And I've done that and my performance got better. And so there was my provable demonstration that I can substitute this false God of having 55 different vitamins for just knowing in my thought that I reflect the limitless, exhaustless, you know, ever renewing source of energy that God is.
Mhm.
See?
And I find I don't even do supplements when I'm on the weekends or vacations. I do my supplements when I head to school to work, like as part of the routine.
Sure.
Good point, because I was just thinking that I don't even take them on the weekend or vacations.
Well, and you know, and you can have, if you're having fun with it, then enjoy it, right? If you're
Yeah.
having fun, enjoy it. But if anything becomes a burden, you should question it
Yeah,
and say, is this really helping?
yeah, yeah. Like going for a run can be fun, but yeah, the minute it becomes like, oh, I have to go find something else. It's,
Yeah, then why are you doing it, right? I'm doing it
Yeah.
because it's the only way I can stay in shape. Well, maybe it's not the only way.
that sounds dreadful.
Yeah. I've been there, I've been there before.
Yeah,
And then I realized, I'm like, wait a minute, wasn't the whole point of this to actually enjoy it?
yeah,
Yeah. And so do that with your finances too. And when you think about, finances, you think of supply, and supply as a principle of God's love to God's manifest, which is supplying for all needs. And I've noticed this: when I don't think about money, I'm able to make a lot more.
right,
Well, it's because when you add that slight fear and doubt to any degree, you start to impede your own receiving,
mhm,
because you start to like add that fear to the equation.
right,
And so the idea is just, follow the fastest path to your joy in every moment and stay in the flow of what you're here to do. And know that the principle of supply is something God bestows, and then transfer all ideas over to God. Say, God is my partner. Give God that tithe of your time first thing in the morning or whenever, and just turn to God for ideas. Your business is not something that gives to you, you give to the business. And so you get the supply of ideas and then give it to the business or to the job or to whatever you're doing. And then you let your hands off the wheel in terms of finances, and the finances start to come as a result of you turning to God as the supply.
right.
It's pretty cool when you start to get a grasp of it. And you're like, okay, it's not as labored as I thought it would be,
Right. Yeah, I do. I interact with like 400 kids a week, so it's interesting to interact. It's a different interaction when you're not trying to. I was talking about. I sometimes worry about the product and not the process, and having everyone work together. And it's still supposed to be fun. I teach music, so it's still supposed to be fun, but we do have some things we need to do. And then they're little, so we have to not we have to. I don't mean to say it like that. Like how to arrange a class so we're all having a good time and learning a lot and flowing. Yeah,
and that's all just a demonstration of just ideas. Every
right,
day you get a rich new supply of ideas. That's your real source of abundance.
right,
And then as you take inspired action on those ideas, it always meets the need.
right. And we like today we have a little girl and she's had some issues. Um, the other kids in the class, we're talking 7, whatever, they're little. The other kids in the class were, why don't you send her out to the principal's office? I'm like, no, because then she doesn't learn how to interact here. And she leaves and then she's not part of the group dynamics. And it might be difficult right now for her, but she won't learn those dynamics. She won't learn how to stay if you
Right.
just keep out all the time. And she wasn't hurting anybody. It was just disruptive, but it became less disruptive when she found out she wasn't going to get kicked out. I wasn't going to send her away, and she was going to still be there. And she could kind of find her way back to be with the group. And then the group could, certain kids in the group would accept her, and then she can work with them again. Because sometimes I'm just thinking like group dynamics. Sometimes these things happen. So, and sometimes that's what, if they remember in the beginning, I was thinking like I fell off the cliff. What do you do when you see someone else falling off the cliff? Or you hold them in that space like I did today, so they could stay and still be part of the group and still get that benefit from the group.
Yeah, you just recognize that the only mind is one
Right.
mind, and that harmony is the only principle that exists within all of its governance. It governs itself with perfect harmony. And so as you know that, joy, peace, love, kindness, gentleness, that's the only real demonstration of true life, then you disregard the mental illusion of, the abrasive personality that comes out of the carnal mind. And you recognize that personality has nothing to do with truth. And then what happens is that your knowledge of the truth brings about the proper alignment of that harmony in the outer, because the truth always is all encompassing. It always pervades, and you just have to see it.
Okay.
See, it's just like sweeping the dust away so that you see the clear picture of what really is.
Right. So it works. So I'm on the right track. Okay.
Yeah. You
Yeah,
leave other people
I
out of
don't
it.
need it. Yeah, go ahead.
Leave other people out of it, because once you brought people into it, you're still in ignorance.
Okay, gotcha. All right.
Yeah. Say, what am I actually looking at here? I'm looking at God's creation. What do I know to be true about God's creation? And then start from there.
Oh, right, okay. And I'm not necessarily, I'm not, what's the word? Responsible for her experience. Or responsible for their experience. I'm responsible for holding them in the perfection that is God in that site.
That's it. Yes.
Okay,
You're only responsible for knowing the truth.
okay, that's a better way to put it than, gotcha, okay.
Yep. So, if you have 15 to 20 unruly people in front of you, what do? Well, you remove people, conditions, circumstances, and qualities of good and evil out of the equation, turn to the principle, and rest on the principle. The principle here is always goodness, harmony, joy, peace, love. And therefore, that's the only true activity going on. And I can let that truth correct anything that it comes in contact with.
Okay,
So when error touches truth, error gets tossed out.
right. So like the spirit, those are not just suggestions, that's what you actually focus on.
Yes.
Writing your little gratitude journal, you're focusing there all the time.
Yes.
Okay,
And you know that if somebody's, for instance, if somebody's not learning, allegedly, if somebody's there not learning, then you just know that intelligence is the only quality within the one mind, and they can only demonstrate the one mind because they can only be an instrument for that one mind. There was no other mind created. And so then all of a sudden, that quality of intelligence becomes manifest.
okay,
And you can wrap that up in like 30 seconds, and you could do more in that 30 seconds than you'd do in 5 years of scolding and chastening somebody for having a behavioral problem, because there is no somebody and there is no behavioral problem. You see, know the truth, and the truth makes it known to you. See what I'm saying?
right. Right, that's just like we were speaking before, referencing having those people in your corner, just being in that space of seeing people whole. Without, yeah.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, it's like the one story that gets me all the time is the guy that was shot in the chest, and then the Christian Scientist prayed and he was made whole. I mean, literally, like shot in the chest where the doctor said he's going to die for sure. I mean, that's a pretty strong mental suggestion.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
right, pretty strong mental suggestion.
I mean, you got a few minutes to a few hours maybe at most, but
Right.
yet, what do you think that person did? They turned away from the mortal illusion to the principle and held steadfast to that principle until they felt totally in alignment, that they know that that was the only principle that could ever appear, because that was all that was ever created.
Gotcha, okay, yeah,
And so if you do that, then you'll experience miracles.
okay,
And it's better when you pray for others, because it's A, you're not attached to it, which is even better. And B, it just seems to work better when you pray for others. And it also benefits you.
Mhm. Right,
Because you're praying the right way now. Now you're knowing the truth versus, if you say, oh, this person's mentally ill, we have to pray to make them whole. It's like, well, you just declared that they're mentally ill. There's no way you're going to pray out of that one.
yeah, yeah,
So
right. Okay,
so just, keep your thought on that and just do it that way.
okay. That makes sense, because we're talking all these different scenarios, and it doesn't matter what scenario I throw at you, it's gonna be the same response.
Or close to it.
It's trying to,
Yeah.
yeah,
And so, fast forward going forward is that when this app comes out, you could use this app and pray for others too. If you want a little guidance, you could just put in the numbers, pop up and then just use each truth to walk you into an understanding and just rest in that understanding.
All right, right.
That's why I built it, really, is I built it so that when I'm praying, I can know what to pray and just rest on it.
That makes sense.
Yeah. It gives me like a shortcut to get to the principal idea that I'm looking for.
Right, and I think so a lot of prayers have been, like you said before, a lot of prayers are what has happened and let's rectify the wrong. And that doesn't cut to the truth at all. We don't need to know the details, like you
You
said.
can't start from error and get to truth.
Right,
You have to start from truth and maintain the continuity of the evidence.
right,
And then that truth is what makes you free.
okay,
Because the two never collide. Spirit and matter never coexist. So spirit is all, matter is temporal illusion. Spirit never touches matter, and matter never touches spirit because matter doesn't exist. All carnal stuff is all saying that you are a thing and you are involved with persons, conditions, qualities, and circumstances of good and evil. And so it's all a dream.
exactly, okay,
And what's cool is that when you start praying for people and you see this stuff start to change, you'll see the dream start to fall away. And then you get that experiential wisdom by saying, somebody comes with a money problem and you pray in this way and you hold that certainty and they let you know, like, wow, something instantly just appeared. I needed it and it showed right up. And you realize that it was just the absence of the dream. They were able to receive what was already given.
right,
Because it was already given, because divine love has already given all.
right,
And so if God has already given you all, what more could you possibly ask for other than to know the truth?
right.
And so that's where the real,
Well, that's the whole truth will set you free. I was gonna say it, but it's like, it sits right there, yeah,
yeah. And so the demonstration is really just clearing away the ignorance by seeing what is real and saying, this is all that's here.
right,
Right where that problem seems to be, God is love and God is there. Divine intelligence is there. Divine love is holding you there. It doesn't mean the serpent's not going to try to lash out. It will. And the more you know, the serpent really comes lashing out.
mhm,
And so that's why I say, get wisdom and then have a support network.
right,
Because if you really are deficient in wisdom and ignorant to the very end, well, the carnal mind really isn't going to attack much within you because it's got you full within its grasp. And in the Nag Hammadi, it says that the rulers have bound you for eons in the middle place. Well, that's reasoning. They've bound you in the middle place of good and bad judgment and reasoning.
right,
And so when you see deficiency in the world, you realize that is all just the carnal mind finding its place. That's the only place it can exist is in thought. And it has to find a host.
right. Right, they like the screw tape letters, whatever those, whatever they were called. Anyway, they said that they were okay with God because God was in like the top corner of the room. Most people thought their God was in a little box there. Or
Yes. Or 50 of them on the supplement cabinets,
bingo, yeah,
because this one protects my heart, this one protects my liver, this one protects my brain, this one, you know what I'm saying? It's like, well, first of all, you don't have a heart, you don't have a liver, and you don't have a brain, and none of these have godlike power to provide any life because life contains all power within itself and it's spiritual.
right,
So if you want to entertain, now go ahead and have fun, but realize that you're not adding to anything and you can't take away anything. And at
Right.
least you know the truth then.
Yeah,
And then your penchant for wanting it falls away because you realize that it's not helping you and it can't hurt you.
right.
I mean, where does the brain supplement get the intelligence to actually make you smarter? You know what I'm saying? Like, it's the biggest thing. It's like an oxymoron, right?
That's funny. I didn't even think about that.
Right.
I say it crosses the blood-brain barrier, and blah, 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 blah. There's all these details and,
No, it's literally a god now. Yeah,
yeah,
it's amazing when you really think about it. What a marvel, you know?
yeah. Yeah, we all know it could be a sugar pill. We all know whatever it is you decided is going to make you well, makes you well.
And then you realize that the world is all just a fabricated illusion of the carnal mind's ignorance. Uh, and then you turn to the principle and you let the principle govern you, and then you begin to open up heaven on earth. You are to bring the light to the world and devour matter within yourself, which means you're devouring that ignorance within your light.
Right.
And that ties the old Nag Hammadis together with the stuff Mary Baker Eddy wrote and Phineas Parkhurst discovered, and even Joel Goldsmith. These are another great one you should look at. Like
Okay.
Emma Curtis Hopkins, Joel Goldsmith, Mary Baker Eddy, Phineas Parkhurst Quimby. There's been so many people that,
You know the older ones. Who's the last one? Joel Goldsmith?
yeah, Joel Goldsmith, amazing, amazing. It'd blow your
Okay.
mind. He built on the work of Mary Baker Eddy and, extrapolated his own knowledge, which is great. And Emma Curtis Hopkins, extraordinary. Like her book, High Mysticism, is one of my favorite books ever written.
Okay.
I read that book all the time. And, many people have done, their works on this, and they've discovered the truth. But only one so-called religion has ever championed the practitioners and teaching of it, which is Christian Science.
Okay.
And that's what they did better than anybody, is Mary Baker Eddy was able to replicate it. Nobody else has ever replicated it,
That makes sense.
And so you can find the truth through various literature, but when you're calling in for support, it's probably the easiest cherry picking method to go find a very seasoned, experienced Christian Science practitioner, because they have studied her works and gone through many demonstrations usually, so
Right.
that they have a keen grasp of the science of it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Which is very different than Course in Miracles, because Course in Miracles seems to be, it's not very practical. I'm just not referencing, I just know a lot of people that do it.
Yeah. I don't know. I can't reference anybody from there. I've obviously seen it and I've studied some of it, but I only know what I've demonstrated and what I've been around to see. And
Right.
there are some really, really amazing Christian scientists that I would put. I mean, going through all these healers will really just bankrupt you. That's what I know. Because when I had Lyme disease, they bankrupted me. I spent, tens of thousands on healers. Just to realize that all it is just it's just a big facade of mental imagery,
Right.
And then I found Christian Scientists, and what do they charge? $25 to support you for the day, which is nothing. And, within a day or two, usually, like, we're right there, at least we're getting progress. You know what I mean?
Right.
And and then it just makes you realize that the world created all these energy healers, which is all garbage.
Yeah, I'm an energy healer, but I have a lot of friends who are like, oh, I do blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, you're tapping into universal energy. I don't know why you're labeling all these other things.
If you're going to energy heal, what you do,
For that, you're just moving it through. It's not you.
yeah. And if you realize what you're doing, and if you're going to be an energy healer, you realize that the only real energy you can offer is love or peace or kindness or joy, a fruit of the spirit, which is the real. And then the truth, the principle. And if you offer that to your client, you have demonstrated the science of Christian healing. Whereas if you say, well, you have a broken leg, oh, I can see the bone, it's shattered, we have to mend it, we have to do this, we have to do. No, now you're actually reinforcing something that God isn't knowing,
Right, and that's how some people end up in those casts for like way longer, because they're still thinking about the break instead of the healing.
Yep.
The
And then
heal, not even the healing.
Yeah, and
Or-
then you're bringing matters laws into the equation, saying it's going to take 8 weeks to get better, and it could be, hurt for life, and you bring all this garbage in,
Yeah,
and it's best if you just leave all that out.
yeah,
And I myself, at one time I had studied all these things from theta healing to matrix energetics to all these different healing modalities, and they have some practical use values in terms of using certain components, but nothing has ever been as efficient as knowing a principle of truth and being able to demonstrate your knowledge of it in the appearance of what seems to be a problem.
right. Yeah, I understand that.
Yeah, because that animal magnetism and that suggestion of evil can be so persuasive that it can captivate the so-called healer and the one receiving the healing. And if it's captivated both of you, now you're both drunk. You see?
Yeah, yeah,
No, I've had people that were healers that were afraid to heal certain people because they were afraid of catching the same disease. And they should be, because if they talk about it, they're going to get it.
true. Good point, but what?
Well, that's the whole thing, is that
Yeah,
shows you right that Jesus didn't, say to the leper, well, I don't know if I should go in there because then I might get it. And then I have to, you know what I mean?
yeah,
He just disregarded it as nothing. And that's the element of pure master, like that's the pure mind of God.
mhm,
And so that was your meditative card, was the pure mind of God.
right,
And that was the exemplary demonstration, was how Jesus could just walk into the most terrifying human condition and disregard it as nothing, because it had no power, because
right,
God, the I am, has all power and never shared power with anything unlike itself, and knows nothing other than its own harmony. And so Jesus's knowledge of that was A, what kept him unfearful, unafraid, and B, what did all the demonstration.
yeah,
It's not me, but my Father in me that doeth the works.
mhm,
And what is the Father? It means parent mind. Parent, the mind, the one mind. He knew the one mind. Now you have the one mind because there was no other mind.
right,
And so you disregard all of its emanations as nothing. Whether it's a heart condition or a leg injury or a financial problem or whatever, you recognize that right where that seems to be and right when it seems to have showed up, God is the only power, principle, mind, and activity ever in existence. And what do we know to be true about God? We don't turn to the problem, we turn to God. What do we know to be true about God? So we turn away from the mortal illusion, we turn to
right,
the principle of God, and we rest on that principle until we feel the certainty in our heart. And once we feel that certainty, our prayer is complete. Nothing more can be done, because nothing more needs to be done. We don't need to do anything from our human perspective. We just need to realize a truth.
right.
And that's the science of healing. That's really, it can be done in a few moments. Like Lona doesn't take more than a few seconds every time I've ever called her. She's never sat around and talked to me for 4 hours about a problem,
That makes sense. I was just thinking about something I could complain about, but there's no reason to, because when I started shifting my thinking about it, like, oh, it suddenly felt much better.
Yes. I mean, if God contains all substance and has governed and already qualified it with his intelligence, with God's intelligence,
Mhm.
you would have to imply that God lacked for intelligence, lacked for proper governance, and lacked for the power to do anything about it, to imply that this problem is real. You see how many implications you have to bring into the equation to try to prove that? And it really, it's like calling God an idiot. Every time we see this problem that we can't overcome, it's like calling God a fool.
Yeah,
And so we dishonor God when we turn to the problem and give it our attention and our concern.
right,
Instead, what did they do? When Paul was tossed into prison, what did he do? He praised the Lord and sang hymns.
right,
And he was set out, he was set free. The ground shakes, right? What did Daniel do in the lion's den, right? I mean, the same thing.
right, right.
They turn to God and they praise God with their heart. And so the common denominator is that here's something troubling you.
Mhm.
They turn away from it, turn to God's idea and praise that idea, and let that idea be all.
Okay,
And then the rest of it, see, what's beautiful about that is you don't have to do anything. Because if you're trying to fight some condition or some human will, then you really are doing the wrong thing. Because to imply that you're trying to overcome somebody's fear or overcome their illness is you're just adding burdens,
yeah, you're talking about God's limitations. You're assuming God has limitations every time you say something.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you're just reinforcing that you think God has limitations, which is not right, not truth at all. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And we can't be deceived by mortal appearances.
right.
One of the hardest times that I ever had to do, it's always involving, like our children or somebody we really love them a lot, right?
Mhm.
And then like my littlest daughter, Fiona, she gashed right through her lip, like punctured
Ouch.
right through the whole thing.
Yeah,
And when I first saw it, my carnal instinct was to freak out. And then I turned away from it. I covered it up so I couldn't see it. And I turned to God's truth and God's allness. Now, needless to say, I did take her in because it had to have stitches right away. At least that's what I thought. I probably could have demonstrated it had I just held the truth, but we took her in and she required nothing. They stitched it. She sat there peacefully, didn't require any anesthetic, and she felt no pain. And it was all, and it was just so seamless.
oh,
It was so
nice.
seamless. It was like the most seamless thing I'd ever witnessed in my life, because we didn't allow that fear to come into the picture. So everything that came thereafter was just smooth.
Right,
But if I would have gotten all afraid, it probably would have turned into one problem after another.
right,
You know?
exactly.
Yep.
And then it would have been, everyone fed off the energy and then all the energy, everyone's energy's going.
Yep.
Exactly.
Yep. So God meets you in your place of understanding always. And you know what? That's the irony is that God can even meet you in a supplement in the beginning. But as you grow in wisdom, you recognize that you no longer need that crutch.
Right.
Just a pair of crutches, like I'm crutching my way through life, and eventually you toss the crutches and then you grow in your spirit.
Right. Right. Most of us have done the crutches and just replaced the crutches.
It's an easy thing to do.
Yeah.
It's just, hey, this brand is not as good as this brand, so this one is the real, this one's the
Yeah.
fake,
Yeah.
Yep. It works until it doesn't. And that's when it's not a principle, it's just a belief.
Right.
And see, that's the thing is we want to just walk out of human belief altogether.
Right.
Because human belief is always changing itself according to the fashion of the day. It's like red wine's good this year, tomorrow it's bad. It's like cheeses make you fat. No, cheese makes you skinny. Just do keto. It's like they come up with a new rule every other day, and then you have to subscribe to that rule.
Eggs, no eggs. Cake for breakfast. Cake for breakfast with a thing.
Yep.
Yeah.
And ultimately, like Tony Myers, you just take food off his pedestal. He had Lou Gehrig's disease. His stomach was paralyzed for 6 months, and he had to live on spirit. And then he got up and walked away from that illness when he recognized the truth that he never could have that illness. And now he heals people and he just teaches them about spirit. But he wrote a fabulous book called Taking Food Off Its Pedestal. And so if anybody gives power to food, they should read that book, because it's not a false god. You don't need to be concerned with oh, I can only eat the most freshest organic this and that and this and that. In reality, you're just making that another God.
Right.
I can feel the same if I eat a donut as I would if I ate like eggs and toast. I mean, realistically, it's what do I prefer today?
Oh, good point. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Whatever's set before me, I
Right,
just give gratitude and appreciate,
right,
Yeah. Because all my power comes from God. All my energy comes from God. My
right,
health comes from God.
right.
And then that allows for my natural desire to kick in, where I don't crave those false idols because of their false power.
Mhm. Right,
That's how I became, at one time mentally ill with the eating disorder, because every calorie was tracked, every micronutrient was tracked. I mean, that's a mental illness.
been
Like,
there in high school, yeah. I had like this, three little things, survived for years.
yes. And then you realize that, well, it's just another way of confining your life into a little box.
And you're consumed by food, or you're consumed by whatever it is, it's every waking moment.
Yeah.
Whatever those addictions are, whatever.
Yeah. And then you're obsessed, right, with the wrong thing.
Yep,
Whereas if you take all of the judgments out of it, then, that natural order kicks in. And then if I want it, I'll eat it. And if I don't, I don't. And I know when I want it. I know when I don't. Like, it's just,
right,
and then you don't overeat and you don't undereat and you just don't assign all those qualities.
yeah,
And you do that with everything, really.
right, that makes sense.
I mean, even business, there are business people that say you have to work 60, 80 hours a week to make a good living, right? There are people that still believe that.
Oh,
Well, I know people like myself included that maybe work a handful of hours a week and don't have to require those laws and rules, because those are human-made beliefs.
right,
I have a different set. I could make one investment and turn that into a lifetime's worth of income and never work again. Well, why wouldn't you adopt that belief if it serves you? Well, then you get lazy, right? Because then you've just done nothing, and now you're still dysfunctional in society because you haven't grown spiritually. So,
yeah, yeah. It's when you've done that from the spiritual growth that you've made, those
yes,
decisions that make the difference, yeah.
yep,
That's funny, I'm clapping things, that was the first one I said truth.
nice,
Hands. That makes sense, okay.
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I know some people that were like they don't ever have to work because they have all the money they need.
Right,
And that just proves to you right there, when you know those people, that money doesn't really actually do anything to improve you as a person. It doesn't even really make you more comfortable unless you have enough wisdom. Because if you have the means to go out and screw yourself up with drugs and all these other things, you will.
right,
But if you have wisdom, well, then you can have all those other things, because you have the wisdom to know when excess is too much, and when, when you need more, you can bring it in.
right,
And then you desire simplicity becomes the norm, because you don't want to spend all day taking care of everything that you've accumulated and spend your whole life thinking about that stuff.
right, stuff.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yep. Well, that's pretty much my whole rant for an hour and 40 minutes. So
Good rant, I need to re-listen to it, I was, I started, I'm gonna take notes, and I was like, no, I'm just gonna be present and absorb it all, but I need to re-listen to this a couple of times and take some notes then, because there's a lot of gems, so, yeah.
yeah, and just use it, and then just see what works for you. And
Right.
that's what you hold on to.
Right. That makes, yeah, and having the support network, which I've been working with, but it gives me avenues, and then, right, to continue reading, gaining wisdom,
Yes.
books, and expanding that library, yeah.
And here's a big thing too, is don't believe that your support network has to be anything special other than knowing the truth. For example, one of my spiritual mentors one time was in a jam. Okay, now this is another lady who's a very, very experienced teacher in Christian Science, and so is her husband. And they both got really, really ill. And they had their son pray because he knew the truth. And their son's faith was enough to help them see that truth and come out of it. See, because the truth alone is the power.
Right.
So, don't qualify it by human means and say,
Gotcha.
well, this person's like much, much better than this person. It's just, no, do they know the truth?
Right, because that's the same thing as like all the Reiki, energy work, blah, 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 blah. How many of those things does this person have? Do they know
Yes.
than the next person? Then, of course, it's all about human stuff and not the truth.
Yes. And so if you have somebody that knows the truth, then you have that on your side. My daughter, Fiona, I've taught her a lot of this stuff. And at 5 years old, she has held the truth for me in times. And I think, I swear she's better than me. Like, because she doesn't know to the contrary half the time.
Not, yeah. Yeah, life has a way of testing out later, but until they're about 7. But that's awesome.
Yeah, the other day,
I should put that out there.
yeah, the other day I was in my carnal mind. And I said something about something I was disapproving of. And she was like, Dad, God is all. And I'm like, you're actually right.
I love it.
Yeah. So she caught me. She was like, I got you, Dad. Boom. And it pops the bubble of the ignorance. So I'm like, okay, I'm back.
I'm
Yeah.
back. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was why we just have these moments of, okay.
Yeah. So if you're around, kids learn it much quicker because they really are close to that, to that innocence.
I had this conversation even today. I know we're doing spirituals. I forget what the line was. It was about, oh, we're tramping. And it was the song is tramping, but we're tramping to make heaven our home. And I actually said, we can either go to heaven or we can make heaven here. This can be our heaven and how we do it here, like
Yes.
the room today. Oh, did that come out of my mouth? That came out of my mouth. I just said that to 38 kids. Okay.
Oh, that's perfect.
Yeah, I was like, oh, okay, because I didn't plan to say that, but it was perfect. I thought so too. I was like, okay, let's make that our truth.
Yep.
Instead of having God being there outside in the corner of the bedroom or whatever.
Yeah. Or some faraway place that we're hoping that we're going to be good enough to qualify for one day.
If we make it through the gate.
Yeah.
Nice.
The irony, right?
Yeah.
Well, but the simplest version is that if we restore our own innocence and our blamelessness by knowing that we never lived in flesh, that was your first card. Remember the earth?
Yeah.
Never born of a mother or father in the earth. Otherwise, you're still under the law of strife.
Right.
So that's to restore blamelessness. You are to enter his gates being blameless.
Right.
So if you know that you never left heaven and that you never came into flesh, then you proceed with your communion with God.
Yeah.
Don't enter God as a mortal, saying, well, look at me, I'm such a wretched, disgusting thing. I've been around for this long and I've done this and I've done this and I've done this. It's like, nope, don't start from that place.
Yeah.
Because that's human carnality.
Right.
It's actually dishonoring God, because if God is the all-pervading intelligence within all of life, to say that God is anything less than perfect and that could have ever become less than perfect through you as the instrument of God is to defile God, or try to.
Right.
And kids get it much quicker because they don't have, all the mental impressions of sorcery. I call it sorcery.
Oh, that's a good way to put it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. It's all the word spells. Yeah. They don't have as much experience with that.
Yeah. And they're not educated in the ways of mortal man.
Right.
And so it's actually, that's why in third world countries like Africa, you can find like people like have these spontaneous healings a lot quicker because they're not so educated in the carnal mind and all the medicine and all the lies.
Right.
They don't have such a resistance to receiving truth.
Yeah, I read, there's a book a long time ago, it's Aborigine, Australian. And I think there was a walkabout. It was an English gal or American gal that got to do a walkabout with the Aborigines. And at some point, someone broke the leg and she got to watch it. He'd be healed immediately.
Exactly.
Such an eye-opening book for me back in somewhere in the 90s.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so that is what happens when we restore the kingdom.
Okay.
And what we're doing is, the quote light workers, right? Because you know the truth. Truth is what you call the light.
Right.
Is you are restoring the kingdom. Every venue that you come into, you're here to restore the kingdom.
Yeah, that's a whole different shift than what I was saying about my job a couple of weeks ago. But I did get that. But yeah.
Yeah. And that's what you do in your quote
The
unquote.
fight, and I don't need to go into fight. I need to go in and be truth.
Yes. And every job is God's work, right? So
Yeah.
whether you're a teacher at a school or you're like, whatever you do, doesn't matter.
Doesn't
Your
matter where you
job
go,
is
that's your job. That's
restore
what
the
you're doing.
kingdom,
Yeah.
And I humble myself all the time too, because it doesn't matter if my daughter gets it even quicker than I do, because it's just a proven fact that the truth is.
Right.
It doesn't matter that I've studied it for a lot longer. The fact that she gets it quicker is just the truth, that the less ignorance that's around you, the quicker the truth comes.
Mm-hmm. Right. And she's grounded in that. She's got a foundation and a grounding in that from a young age.
Yeah.
Having to find it the way we found it back later on.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's the hardest is for people that have to undo like all of their medical training or all of their other type of training.
Right.
Because they have to undo every last precept of ignorance that they picked up.
Right.
And, it's, the best thing you can do is just keep doing it.
Right.
And spend time with the truth and give that your attention and your love. And that's a way of, that's the tithe of your time.
Oh, yeah. It's not just money.
It's everything. It's give up everything for God. And then God will give you what's already yours because you've just evaporated all the ignorance.
Right.
The irony is that God's already given his full lot to all of us.
Mm-hmm.
And most have demonstrated only to the degree of their knowledge of it.
Right.
So we have to just give up what it doesn't belong to us to get what belongs to us. That's why I lay down our life to gain our life.
Right. So the 30-day, I don't know what you call it, 30-day boot camp or whatever you have, it's a Tuesday, Thursday Zoom thing.
Yeah.
That's just another, like it's with a group of people. I love the one-on-one, but is that just you're helping each other?
Yeah. And these are not designed to be one-on-one. This is just how it played out,
Now, I'm not complaining.
whether one shows up or 100 shows up, it doesn't matter to me, because I don't prepare for any of it. I just let, like what you did tonight. I know Divine Mind has its own agenda, and I just show up, and then I just deliver according to what Divine Mind is doing.
Right.
And so that's what it's going to be, it's going to be, well, I have a lot of tools and a lot of things we could do, but I'm just going to lay that aside and just say, God, what do you want to do?
Yeah.
Because I've done it both ways. I've gone in and doggedly determined to do it in my way, and I've surrendered and done it God's way. And I found that God's way is always right on the money. Like it's right where the message needs to be is right there.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Because I knew, and some, if you can't make it live, I know every rehearsal a couple nights or something. I have a gig. So, okay. So those would be something I can just listen to. I can't make it live. That's the only reason I didn't jump on that. Okay. So
a question for you is, since it was just you and I, would you be okay if I shared this with YouTube, or do you want to keep it?
No, share away, because there's so many nuggets here.
I figured it's a way to get it out there
I thought about that in the very, very beginning, that there were a couple nuggets like in the first 15 minutes. I thought, well, he needs to share this. So yeah, go ahead. Share.
Well, that's the whole point is just to get it, to give it freely. And that's what it's all about, really. And nothing was personally revealed. So it's not like I'm, sharing.
No, there's nothing out there going out there that's, that was actually right. Absolutely. Unless
Awesome.
what I just said that made no sense and I stuttered.
Well, you showed up exactly like I did. You showed up with your cup empty.
Yeah.
And I think it's better to show up with your cup empty. Because once you have the truth, you naturally empty your cup. Or you rediscover humility. Because what I found is that even when you know the truth, you still have to remember it's not you, it's the truth itself. Otherwise, you will be tested for your humility again.
Yeah. Yeah, I caught that too. When you said that, I wrote that, you said, I think last month, it was part of the Zoom call about humility to the nth degree and something else. Oh, I'm happy and I'm ready for more.
Yeah.
Because we do these I am statements with the students. And the first day I wrote, I am happy, I'm ready for more on the board. They walk in, everyone has an I am statement, we have a mirror. And so each room is doing it. And it's not like I am blue. It's I am not even blue. I love my mother. It's I am. And and we had a discussion. Who are you? I'm not a fireman. I'm not a this. Who are you when you're doing that? So this is great to have conversations with kids this age. But anyway, I wrote that on the board for my I am statement. It took a little bit of time for me to settle into that.
Nice.
I had a day where I wasn't so happy. I was like, okay, I guess I am happy. And I'm just going to step back into that instead of being.
That's it.
Shift.
That's the humility to rest on it.
Gotcha. Okay.
So for instance, yesterday when I had to do, my steadfast to a principle while I was demonstrating that I am healed, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's the difference of what I felt like in the morning. To say that I am healed and to feel that way are two different realities, right? But to step back and to rest under the covenant, the grace of God's care, and even calling in support when necessary, but just to know that the truth is, and that nothing can take me out of that. That's humility. Because it takes humility to not fear anything in the mortal realm. And that's the biggest thing, is Mary Baker Eddy discovered that you can't, well, she said, if you successfully remove the fear from your patient, you have about 80% of the work already accomplished. Because what do? We fear first.
Right.
And that's the first step to sin. And the Nag Hammadi is fear, confusion, lack of trust, division, and double-mindedness. And fear implies the dialectic of attachments and aversions have come out. And what that is it says, this condition, very bad. This condition of healthy Matt, very good. Well, there is no healthy Matt and there is no bad. So both of them have to be undone.
Right.
Because I am.
Then you go to ether, which was the truth.
Yes. That's it. I have to rest on that principle and trust my life to that truth. That's where the humility really kicks in. And this is the ultimate demonstration, is that once you know the truth, can you trust your life to that truth? Like Lona did with the scorpion bite. Everybody in the natural said, you're going to die. Like, this is a fatal bite. And her head was swelling. Like, she had all of the symptoms and the pain and everything. But she knew that she was a spiritual idea. And there wasn't a single element of error. God is a spirit. Okay. She knew that she was the reflection of God. And she turned to God and trusted her life to God. That was the last thing she said. She said, you can trust your life to God. And see, if you trust your life to God, and I think I'll end on this note, I want to show you this, is that this is what I prayed yesterday. And this is why I think it's the most powerful Psalm in the Bible. It's Psalm 91, which everybody pretty much knows, right? You know the Psalm 91.
I should.
Yeah.
Well, you read off, I knew. Oh, yeah.
So he that dwelleth in the secret place of the Most High shall abide under the shadow of the Almighty. So that's to have spiritual consciousness, right?
Mhm.
And so then it goes on, but what I held on to is this one right here. This is what I held on to all day. Because he has set his love upon me, therefore I will deliver him. I will set him on high because he hath known my name. So name implies nature and location, right? Spiritual nature of divine purity, right?
Mhm.
Because I set my love upon that, God's promise is that I will be delivered. So humility is what is required to trust your life to that promise, even if your five senses are telling you, no, we're going to take you out. This is it. This is the last straw for you. We got you this time. You see,
Gotcha.
that's an absolute humility experience. That's what
Mhm.
real humility looks like. And that's a good place to be, because then once you've demonstrated that, then you know that God alone is. And that's a true revelation right there. And see, I learned that with finances years ago with tithing. Is I said in my heart, God, if I go down, I'm going down believing in you. And when I started tithing, I put all of the burden on God's promise that he would open the windows and pour out the blessing. I said, it has nothing to do with me. And God has not failed. You see, that's because God is.
Right.
It doesn't mean I haven't been tempted again. It just means that I've had to prove my humility again.
Gotcha.
See?
That's way different than going, well, I'll give you $10 here or there. I'll put $20 as the collection plate goes by.
That doesn't prove anything.
No.
That
Yes.
just says that you're less than, so here, have some of my scraps.
Yeah.
No, I mean, or the worst is if you play God like a lotto, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, because it's really not the right heart. Just
No.
remember, because he has set his love upon you, it's the love that you give and the trust.
Right.
That's what does it. And if you don't love God, don't let loose of that money, because you're going to need it a lot more than God does.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
because if you can't live on 100% of your own doing and you don't love God and trust God as a source, then you better keep all 100% of that, because your tithe isn't a tithe. And B, you're up to your own good now.
Right. Yeah. That's huge.
Yeah. And so I know that I'm not my own provider. And I don't want to be, because that would be too burdensome. I can't convince the whole world to my bidding. I mean, how much time and effort and energy do you think I have? You know?
Yeah.
No, I just turn to God every day for a divine idea. And I know that I've been obedient. I've done my tithe. I say, God, money's not my God. You're my God. Like, I know that you're my supply. So what shall we do? You know, and then I get the ideas and then I act on those ideas. That's my daily bread.
Right.
And then God prospers the work of your hands, because you trust the Lord to be your all in all sufficiency.
Right.
And then it becomes joyful, because now you can say, what is the fastest path to my joy in this moment? Because you've released the burdens and cares and concerns that held you out of joy.
Right. And that's why I call it a love offering, not just and tithing. Right.
Yeah, tithe and love offering. That's another way.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
You know, it probably should be called a love offering. I
Yeah,
think
that,
tithe
that's cool. Right.
is only to symbolize the 1 and the 0. That's all it meant. But
Right.
it is a love offering. Yes.
Yeah.
It has to be done that way. And the same with your time. So
Mhm.
when you get up and meet God in the morning, or whenever you decide to do it, and you say, you know, you're going to govern my life, God, let's get into your word. Let's let you minister to me. Let's turn to you for the ideas for my supply. And you do it with love and appreciation,
Right.
and you'll never go wrong. It's only when you come at it from a place of ignorance that God will still give you grace, but you're the one delaying the demonstration because of the ignorance.
Right.
Yep.
I understand that.
Yeah, because first principle says God has already given you all. And so if you've already been given all, well, then the real trick is, well, let's demonstrate it.
Yeah, and obviously that's where I just was with that aversion card.
Yep.
Aversion card was perfect.
Let's demonstrate. And you gave that to yourself, see?
Right.
Because the one mind already knew.
Yeah.
So that's a process called transference, because the inner and the outer, see, the outer is the hologram. It's the reflection. It's just it just decayed. It becomes ignorance because of the centrifugal loss of power, according to the laws of, whatever the Russell, what's his name? Walter Russell, A New Concept of the Universe. If
Okay.
you read that book or listen to it on Audible, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about the centrifugal loss of power, divergent, all that stuff will make sense. But then you can bring it back to the scripture, and then you can see what the scripture says, and then you apply it.
Right.
And then you get the fruit. And then you're like, thank you, God. And then you love God more.
Right.
Yeah. All right. So I'll stop the recording now. So it's exactly 2 hours long.